Okay, call the meeting to order at 6:35. All commissioners are present except for President Rosick. I did inform the plan commissioners just before the meeting started that the board adopted the ordinance amendment last night to reduce the commission from 9 to 7 members. So I informed Commissioners Leah Blankenship and Tim Hansman of their terming out essentially. So I thank them both for their service, and they acknowledged their appreciation for serving on the commission. So at that, we are now down to 7 members, of which 4 would require for quorum. And if we ever do meet back in person, hopefully we all have chairs now to sit on. So
didn't even think about that.
Something to live for.
Right. Yeah. So we will fit in the courthouse room when we do meet back in person. So with that introduction, first item, or the second item on the agenda is the approval of the August 25th, 2020 meeting minutes. Have we had a chance to review?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of our August 25th, 2020 meeting.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion on the minutes?
Just to say another excellent job by Crystal.
Thank you.
Okay, if not, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the minutes pass 6-0. The third item on our agenda is a public hearing for a proposed sandwich delivery shop at 4473 North Oakland Avenue. It's the space formerly occupied by Curves. The public hearing has actually been canceled because the business plan that was proposed no longer worked for what he was hoping. So he is currently working with our building inspector and myself, I suppose, to modify the plans. There's an aspect of a pet shop or adopt a dog kind of feature with it that requires separation of the spaces per the health department with health code. So he is working on plans to hopefully come back for the October meeting, but as we had published it, it needed to be on the agenda. So just for your reference, it has been canceled. We expect it to come back in some shape or form in October. So
it would appear that, I'm sorry to see the Curves. I know that was the bid, and the village gave some money to the Curves that did not survive the pandemic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I guess I don't recall offhand, but if you recall that, Trustee Stoker, we did have the grant. So if they did receive it, that perhaps is one that didn't make it through the pandemic so far. I think all fitness facilities probably had a hard time, or still are having a hard time with that. So with that's canceled. We'll go on to item number 4, which is the review of the utilities and community facility chapter of the comprehensive plan update. Similar to last month's meeting, I've drafted kind of the body of the chapter, but have left the goals, objectives, and recommendations to be discussed. So let me share my screen here, and I'll go through a brief outline or presentation. And if at all you ever want to jump in and note a certain section that you either think is missing or needs edits or improvements, please feel free to let me know. I offered for Crystal to do this, but she wanted to do the minutes instead.
Oh, come on. You wrote it. You got to, share it with everyone.
Okay. Just want to confirm, are you seeing the screen?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah.
Okay. So like I said, feel free to jump in whenever. So this is an overview of the timeline. So we've had some public engagement in the early and late summer. We are here at the September 22nd meeting to review the final of the village-led chapters. So there's 5 chapters led by the village plus implementation. So at this point, we've gone through the 5 quote-unquote updates. On September 29th, next Tuesday, you'll be looking at our consultants chapters. So we hired Vanderwall to lead issues and opportunities, land use, and intergovernmental cooperation as more of the new chapters. So probably more interested in getting those, but we're going to get through these first. But we are scheduled for those next week. We actually already have the drafts, and so we're just preparing this meeting first, and then we'll go through those in September. So at that point, we'll have all of the bodies of the chapters drafted, at which point it was expected that we would have a public engagement meeting in October to kind of reveal and discuss what we think the goals, opportunities, and recommendations could be, so we can get some feedback on that. Just a brief update. At last night's board meeting, the village board did vote to reconsider a recently adopted parking ordinance. That will impact my work plan. So depending on what happens October 5th, I kind of threw that October meeting in red with a question mark. I cannot guarantee that I will have the chance to get through everything. So in speaking with the village manager, we're kind of at a wait and see period here to see what happens on October 5th. If the board does prioritize parking, I'll be honest with my time in suggesting that I can't rush through this comprehensive plan. It deserves more attention than that. So we'll get through what we have here in September. October, if we do have a meeting, we'll definitely keep you posted on that, but kind of at a wait and see where that goes right now. If it does go through, we would be looking at a plan commission review of the final chapter or the final draft in November with adoption by the board January 2021. There is no real penalty if we don't get it adopted in time, but that always has been the goal. So if my work plan allows it, we'll see what we can do. All right, long-winded introduction to say that here we are with communities and community facilities and utilities. So I'll just go through the bulleted sections here. Once again, feel free to jump in if you have want to stop me at any particular section. We could look at it more in detail. 4.1 is just a general introduction of what the chapter relates to. In general, it relates to the community facilities, so the buildings that the village maintains, and kind of community open space, things like that, and then the utilities, sewer, water, the infrastructure that DPW is in charge of. Our current vision statement, I won't read it, but it does provide some general goals for what the village would look like in 2025, excellent schools, clean air and water, financially responsible community with well-maintained buildings and infrastructure. So that kind of hits home on what this chapter relates to. We didn't do specific public input related to community facilities and utilities, but within the stakeholder interviews that I believe I shared with you earlier in the month, there was a kind of a theme to maximize the use of existing facilities. We are a built-up community, park space is tight, our infrastructure is aging, so kind of the goal that has been heard throughout this process and in general planning practices in the past is to maximize the use of existing facilities and to maintain them.
Bart, I had a question about, so stakeholder input will be rewritten. I didn't understand. It talked about there was minimal direct input related to community facilities and utilities, may be related to a general comfort or lack of awareness. So we're recrafting that?
No, that's kind of where we're at. So once again, this chapter was an update. Within the update chapters, it was the direction to incorporate existing planning initiatives. I don't have an initiative that was specifically geared towards these two topics. So like I said, in the stakeholder interview, there was minimal direct input on this particular topic. If the plan commission wanted to, and it's definitely within your right, if you wanted to have more specific input on this, we could add that either through some sort of survey or something at the open house to confirm where we're at. So
no, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that we updated this part about the high impact actions about the school district facilities. That'll be updated, right? Because that's all a done deal.
yes, I will. I'll take a second read at that and make sure that it's that it reads current.
Unless, I guess it's just supposed to be a historical look back. So if that's what they want here, then that's what we've got, and then it's fine. Maybe it's just my confusion.
Okay, yeah, I'll double check on it. I think the previous plan in 2010 discussed the aging facilities and a downward trend in enrollment, and so it kind of focused somewhat on that. Enrollment.
I've been thrown off by the word currently.
Okay.
I'm currently working towards implementation, and if you mean construction, then it's accurate, but otherwise, okay.
Yep. I think that was the intention, but I'll double check my wording. So thank you for review. So then 4.2.2 is this existing framework. As I've documented, the primary stakeholder in terms of implementation for community facilities and utilities is our Department of Public Works. They also maintain our utility function, so obviously they're the primary focus of this. However, we do have other intergovernmental partners, the school district, North Shore Fire, North Shore Health Department, that shares or, maintains community facilities. So it's important that we, engage with those stakeholders to confirm the contents of what's here, to make sure that we understand whether or not, for example, the school district would plan a referendum or things like that. That's kind of the intent of the comprehensive plan, is to give a baseline of where we're at. As I mentioned in the previous plan, it did discuss aging facilities. So the recommendation for a referendum per se wasn't in there, but we're just trying to make sure that with our stakeholders, we understand where they're coming from. So things like that don't hit us as a surprise when we're planning our own efforts. So we do have stakeholders outside of the village that we need to be conscious of, is what I'm trying to summarize here. And then within our annual planning process, the annual budget and our long-range financial plan reviews obviously hit directly home on community facilities and utilities. So those two things, one happening right now, the budget, and then in the spring, the long-range financial plan, have direct discussion on where we're at. So our recommendation should be geared towards those kind of conversations. Within 4.3.1, I updated the organizational chart of the village, just kind of giving a framework of how we function as a municipality. 4.3.2, and I'll stop saying all the numbers if I can. Village Hall. That's where the main government functions out of. I can say that in my mind, there are some needed updates to that facility. It is aging, whether that's communication and technology that we've been learning through this pandemic, but there will be some recommendations likely on that. Public Works, they've had numerous facility reviews suggesting that their current layout is inefficient. And so I think out of this chapter, that is going to be one of the big things that we'll have to try to pin down in terms of goals, objectives, and recommendations, is a path forward on how to implement and or continue studying that particular facility.
Art, I had just one note, just as a very detailed thing. Public Works 4.3.3, sometimes it's referred to as the yard, other places it's the lot.
Okay.
I guess I just go with yard to be consistent.
Okay.
Thanks.
Then the police facilities, obviously since the last plan, we have relocated those services. So once again, in theory, the last plan should have identified that, they were aging and needed to be improved. So within this, I've kind of documented with the police chief's help, kind of a summary of what's taken place since the last plan. We do have one kind of outstanding phase within that building that's kind of generically been called a community room. And so perhaps identifying some sort of goal or objective with that in this plan would be relevant. Similarly, 4.3.5, fire and rescue. Since the last plan, obviously that function of that building has changed, currently under renovations right now, and it changed ownership. So the village has less direct maintenance responsibilities and control of that. But in terms of facilities, obviously a major player in what we do.
Bart, I had a question about that. So besides a fire truck, we also have a med unit there always?
I believe so, but I can confirm that with Chief Whitaker. Our offices are right next to it, and I believe it always is there. I don't know if Crystal has.
I think since I've been here since 2010, there's always been an ambulance there.
Yeah, so
I know it looks like they've got two big bays, right? One on the north and one on the south. I was just by there today.
Yeah, I think the fire truck will be in the north bay and the ambulance actually is in the south bay.
Okay.
yeah. So during the renovations, they might not both be there because obviously they're not both accessible right now. But
Right.
the intention is to keep each of those there. But I can confirm with Chief Whitaker, that's the intention, because it's good to note that, because that is something that the community, wants to have, obviously, if we can. So then we're looking at Village Center as the next community facility that we have. Obviously a lot of different organizations function there. The library being probably the most prominent one. They are currently undergoing a 2020 master plan to identify some, potential modifications to the space. So we'll just keep an eye on that, working with Director Rachel from the library on that. Senior Resource Center, Historical Society have office building.
I have to go back as a member of the Shorewood Women's Club. I'm under the understanding that the Women's Club started the first library, but I'll dig into some information on and see if I can get that back to you.
Okay.
My other question is, do we want to mention the land bequest? Because it does affect, the land bequest, I believe, includes capital expenditures for the future development of the physical public library. It's just a thought. What does everyone else think?
What request is that, Kathy?
The Lang bequest, it was $5 million.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if this is not appropriate, just tell me, Mr. Gruppentrag, but I don't know.
You know, I think that's perfectly accurate. So I appreciate the suggestion on that. I had given this section to the library just to kind of update, and perhaps we didn't develop enough future actions as we did historical actions. But yeah, that money, if it's used for capital to invest in the facility, definitely needs to be identified so that we know, because this is the place to identify all those things so that we know what we're working with. So definitely just made a note to have Rachel update that section.
And I had one other quick question. So there's a historical society sign on the north side of Village Hall. Do they have an office at the Village Center and collections at the Village Hall, or?
I don't think they have an office. I think they have a storage, like,
There's a storage room in the basement.
yeah, I think it's just mostly for storage. I don't think they ever take anyone in there.
Okay, never mind. Thank you.
No, but it's good to know because maybe I'll add that to the Village Hall section because I'm not sure if that's a long-term plan of that. I don't think that's an ideal layout for them. So this once again is the place if it's a need for them to have different or better storage or to maintain the storage, we gotta definitely include that. So I appreciate.
Sounds like a fire hazard in an old building.
Yeah, I'll make a note for storage. And then lastly, the North Shore Health Department also has offices. They split between our Village Center and Brown Deer. I know there's been larger discussions of perhaps locating or consolidating those. So I do want to reach out specifically to them to confirm whether or not that continues to be questioned. But they obviously have, relatively new office space within that center. So I presume, renovations aren't necessary at this time, but in terms of their staff, I'm not sure how they're split up. So I do want to follow up on that just myself personally to understand it better. Section 4.3.7 relates to parks and recreational facilities. This is kind of an awkward, I think, duplication within the state statute. So both chapters 4 and chapter 5 are required to talk about parks. In the previous plan, we opted to put parks in chapter 5. So I'm just going to maintain that standard here. So essentially, we're just going to say see chapter 5 for additional information on community facilities related to parks. Yep.
Did you want to mention the nature preserve in this chapter as well, chapter 5? As one of the community facilities.
Yep, I'll make sure that it's clear that it's mentioned. We'll get to it later, obviously. I think it might be included within the park section. Maybe that's in terms of park versus nature preserve. That's a good clarification for us to understand if that means a difference.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess it is confusing. Do we even need this last paragraph here about Hubbard Park when it will all be in it should all be in 5, right?
Yeah, well, the next page continues on River Park Atwater. So this chapter kind of just, in a very brief summary, I'd be happy to, reduce it because, like I said, it's a duplication of the next chapter. So,
well, whatever the state needs, right? Do we want to mention the canoe launch that we just approved and the river trail in Hubbard Park?
Yep. So in the next chapter, we'll definitely remind you to make a note of the canoe launch that was approved for just for the
Canoe and kayak.
Design, correct, last night. It's not approved for construction just yet, but I presume
Correct.
it's headed.
Canoe and kayak.
Yep, okay. 4.3.8, we also need to identify recreation or fitness facilities. So in terms of village or municipal or government maintained, we do have the Shorewood Community Fitness Center. I need to reach out to the school district or whoever maintains that building to confirm whether or not there's any long-range facility plans with that. There may or may not be, but I didn't get a chance before the update. So what's currently in there is just kind of a repeat of what was in there previously. So if anyone knows that, feel free to let me know, but I do have a mental note and actually a physical note to clarify that section before the final draft is updated.
I don't know if this fits in, but you know, our only museum is in, you know, the paragraph, Milwaukee County's Esterbrook Park. Isn't our only museum the Benjamin Church House?
And when you say our, are you referring to located within the village or maintained by the village?
Located in.
So in the cultural resources, I think we do identify that specific structure.
Oh, okay, right.
So
Right.
let's just, when we get to that, let's confirm that it has everything that it needs and that we identify that the county's responsible for the maintenance of that, just so we have clear roles on that. But good point, yep. So then 4.3.9, we're required to identify school facilities. So with that, we've identified both public and private. In terms of public, obviously the referendum in terms of maintenance of the facilities is a big community topic over the past couple of years. So I want to make sure that we have that accurately reflected in terms of what is taking place there. It should leave our facilities in great shape and, you know, without need for additional renovations or improvements, hopefully in the near future. So to make sure that we have that accurately represented. In the previous plan, enrollment numbers was a big discussion because between 2000 and 2009, I believe there was a falling enrollment that has since, in my mind, stabilized. You guys as community members might know more in terms of that conversation with the school district, but based on what's reported at the state, I think enrollment perhaps is less in decline or in need of addressing with this particular plan. So I think in terms of the school district, we'll focus on documenting the renovations that are taking place at the actual facilities. St. Robert's, we are required to include private school facilities. So I have their enrollment numbers included as well. I'm less familiar with their facility. Obviously it's from the 1950s, so there probably are needs that might take place there, but I need to reach out to St. Robert's specifically to see whether or not they have any particular plans that are worth including here, just so that once again, we're aware of the state of those facilities, because that's the intent of this chapter.
I want to mention, I don't know how quickly the Department of Public Instruction will get you updated numbers when they do their fall count, but from what I've read online, St. Robert's enrollment increased by 50 or 60 students by those parents who wanted face-to-face learning for their children rather than the virtual that the school district is currently doing. And do we want to mention that, the whole the whole COVID virtual has made a change in learning, and we don't know what the future will be for that, or?
The need for the chapter kind of is for facilities. And so in terms of whether or not virtual learning is, like the school district is building in technology, I believe, so that does make sense. So I think it's worth a mention, particularly, as we move forward, that we probably should make sure that we have all of our facilities upgraded, or at least think about upgrading it for this type of situation. Similar to Village Hall, we don't have upgraded IT to be doing this if we go back into it, but I do believe the hope is that we do still offer virtual participation when we go back to Village Hall. So I'm going to make sure I put that in Village Hall section. I think it's relevant to schools as well. So I made a note here. We'll see if I can include it somehow.
Do we need to talk about, like, how AT&T put the fiber through, like, in terms of facilities, do we look at like the hardwiring upgrade? I don't really understand the technology, like, I think only AT&T has gotten their fiber optic lines through, but do other, like Spectrum or some of the other providers need to update their facilities, like for Shorewood Village needs and school needs?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I kind of, once again, I need to research that more. I think it's later in this chapter when it talks about telecommunications.
Oh, okay.
I talked with our building inspector, Justin Burris, on that, because he and Joel Colsteve, our DPW, they're kind of our contacts in terms of upgrading fiber throughout the community. So I do want to get at least some sort of baseline of where we're at. We do know that private companies are laying fiber in the village. necessary piece of infrastructure. So I did talk to him before the draft came out, but we don't have enough information right now to have any specific recommendations or goals with that. I know DPW would like to see perhaps conduit placed when they do new roads so that they don't have to dig them up every time that they add something. So definitely something that we need to be paying attention to, because it's here now. It's going to be even more so. Same thing with small cell sites. So that section currently isn't as built up once again as it could be, because it's just kind of updated from what it was, but something we need to pay attention to. I think lastly, in this particular section, community facilities, we're required to document healthcare and childcare. Ascension is our nearest hospital, and we do have a clinic within our community. So in that respect, we are served directly by healthcare, assuming that, you know, your providers are located there. And then,
I'm sorry, Bart, I forgot. When you get to schools, you mentioned the preschool that's sponsored by the public school district, Bright Beginnings. Before the COVID, there was a Shorewood Whitefish Bay preschool at Kingo Lutheran Church.
oh, okay.
So it'd be private, is that what you call it?
Yep.
So we'll see how that works out. Thank you.
Yep, I might reach back out to you for either a contact or confirmation of that, but that's definitely the intent of this chapter, is to include that kind of detail. Then lastly, private childcare. So within the last planning decade, Casa de Corazon did open up, so we do have a dedicated daycare facility here now, as well as Milestones, which operates before and after school programs in various locations in the community, obviously. So once again, just kind of confirming the presence of that, so we understand what we're planning for, that we are currently served by most of these institutions. So we're good that way. If by chance we weren't, probably would be a goal to, you know, expand or make sure that we have coverage for our community members. But as of now, we've at least got a baseline coverage. Why isn't this turning? Then going into the utilities portion of it, obviously sanitary and storm sewer are probably the thing that we think of most when we think of utilities. It's been a large topic in Shorewood over the past 10 years after the 2010 floods. And so DPW has done numerous studies on how to improve those facilities and lower the instances of basement backups. And so we'll be leaning on those previous planning efforts and the long-range financial plan for implementation of those. Generally, we do have 5 separated areas and 1 combined area that's pretty unique. So planning for that does present us with, you know, a challenge, both logistically and financially. So we'll just make sure that we have this all accurate and up to date with Leanne at DPW. Water supply, we have a water.
Hey, Bart,
Yep.
on that graphic that's in there, there's a map. You can't, the font is tiny on the legend. I blew it up and I can't read it at all.
Yep. I almost took it out to say to insert it, because we're going to have a new one of those made.
Okay.
But the colors at least showed the general blob areas, but point well taken, that will be updated for sure. While we're on that topic, after we get through these chapters tonight and Vandewall gets through their 3 next week, we'll be meeting with our GIS consultants to identify the scope of mapping for this particular plan. So I think I mentioned it last time, and I'll mention it again right now because we're talking about it. If there are maps that I have not identified to insert that you would like to see in here, or thoughts of maps that you'd like to see, feel free to either, you know, speak up within the meeting or after the meeting, give me an email, because we will be meeting in early October, myself and Vandewall, to kind of outline what we need to ask for them to start drafting. So this is one of them to update just for clarity's sake, but if there's other ones that, you know, you're looking for that I haven't mentioned, feel free to mention it. Continue with utilities, solid waste disposal and recycling, both through DPW and or contracts. DPW, power distribution. I would like to perhaps discuss more alternate energy within that chapter, because the Conservation Committee has been proactively trying to encourage solar installations at the very least. So I kind of want to document their efforts, and if they've got goals for the next 10 years, make sure those are included. Once again, just kind of ran out of time before this draft was due. So it's a large effort. So I would want to make sure that everyone's efforts are being included. I know the Conservation Committee has been, you know, encouraging that. So we'll be adding that. And then, as I mentioned, telecommunications, I'll be working with my building inspector and DPW to document existing and current fiber projects, as well as, future small cell things. I know that's come from the Plan Commission in the past in terms of what we can and can't regulate. So I think it's worth noting within this chapter, what the state allows us to do. So be beefing that one up just slightly. It's not much we can do about it, but I just want to make sure it's in there. As I mentioned, as an update, the intent for this chapter was to incorporate other planning efforts. As I've identified those to be long-range financial plan, which projects out 10 years of capital infrastructure. So utilities are definitely a big part of that. We also have maintained a capacity management operations and maintenance plan, CMOM, for our, I believe, storm and sewer utility. We have a comprehensive facility plan relating to our sanitary sewer and combined sewer and storm sewer areas.
Bart, I have a question here. So when you get to the schools, it talks about improvements at the schools and improvements possibly at DPW yard. So is this a place where we need to outline? We have so many sewerage projects planned. Should we be including a brief overview of everything
We definitely could. My hesitation with that is they do change. And so maybe referencing, so what I'm saying is I tried to reference the long range plan because that's where they actually exist in budgeting, circles. So, but if we at least want to outline what those are and then indicate the long range financial plan, we'll schedule them accordingly.
Yeah, I guess maybe the biggest one is the Southeast project, right?
Yep.
And the next on the agenda is redoing Oakland Avenue. So those would be the two things I would, but that's not part of the CMOM. It's just it's a question, informational question for me. Thank you.
Yeah, and with that, I have not had a chance to review this draft with Director of Public Works, Leanne Butchlick. We're both kind of stretched to capacity right now. So at some point we'll need to sit down and make sure that we're both happy with the contents. This chapter primarily relates to their, bailiwick. So I want to make sure what they need is in here. So they can definitely add and flesh this out a little bit better. This is just kind of the first draft update that we're looking at right here. Public Works Yard Master Plan. Oh, go ahead, Sangeeta.
Question about the sewers, and I guess I don't even know, since Lake Drive is being torn up in 2025, is that when some of that, should that be mentioned in there, that is probably an opportunity that should be taken advantage of with whatever, needs to be done along Lake Drive?
Yeah, so in the transportation plan, I'm hoping that we definitely mentioned the reconstruction of that. I'll admit it, I don't personally know what utility work is planned with that project, but if there either is work or if there's opportunity for work, we should definitely confirm that with DPW within this particular chapter so that we know.
They're aware of it and that this is the time to take advantage of everything being open.
Yep, for sure. So yeah, this plan is trying to, condense all those other plans into one kind of document so we can see everything that we're working on and, prioritize accordingly and make sure they meet our goals and objectives. So if we know we're doing it, we definitely should be talking about it.
Bart?
Yep.
Village Hall, have there been any studies or updates as far as what kind of repairs or renovations Village Hall needs, or anything that we should put in the goals section that follows next? Or would that just be, continue to evaluate the condition of village facilities?
Yeah, that's currently the catch-all for that. But if there's a specific upgrade, whether it's, a boiler or an elevator, things like that, we probably need to start thinking more specifically on that. The only effort that I was able to confirm was with our previous building inspector had done a occupancy kind of inspection on it and identified small things here and there, electrical outlets, et cetera. But I don't know that we have an actual broader overview. It might be something that the village manager, might want to do in the next 10 years. And so I think that specific question needs to be asked.
Bart, this is Teresa. Somewhere I read in here, and I'm losing my place, about the linear lines. I'm kind of curious about lead in our water supply, and if that's addressed in here, if that's appropriate.
Definitely appropriate. It should be within the water supply section of it. So I'll confirm again with Director Butchlick what we've previously done and what we're planning to do. Yep, we get that question quite a bit in our office, so I don't believe it's currently in there. So then I'll just finalize this. 4.6 discusses the goals, objectives, and recommendations. The current goal within the current plan is to maintain and improve private property and public infrastructure to maximize assessed value of all real estate. I'd probably, you know, include some other things within that goal in terms of sustainability and whatnot, but so I will be probably wordsmithing that. This is just to once again give you a background of what's in there. I think more importantly at this point, what we're looking, and I'm not going to read these, and they're in your draft.
Bart, just to go back to that last one, it talks about a needs-based parking program. I would just want to make sure that jives with what came out of the transportation and parking study.
Yeah, and we actually moved the parking section to the transportation chapter within this draft. So in the previous draft, it had the parking utility listed. I moved.
So maybe that bullet point will just be gone.
Correct. That would go to transportation, and whatever we relate to parking would be in the transportation section at that point. So yeah, these are just things that I've picked from the current planning efforts and things that I've heard. To Commissioner Kylie Miller's point, some of them are very generic. You know, maintaining facilities. If there's a more specific way to read these, or whether it reference to lead lines, things like that. I've taken some notes here tonight from things that you've said. So if there's anything else on this particular chapter, I'd be happy to, you know, open it for discussion right now, just to make sure that the next draft includes everything that we think it needs to.
The only thing I was wondering about was that downspout disconnection program as required by MMSD. Is that reference village-owned properties, or is it meant to include residential as well?
It's residential as well.
Yeah, because if the latter, we might want to put something in there, you know, where feasible, because I know we've done that for our house, and there's just some locations where there's nowhere for the water to go except to continue to go down. You cannot do a single one. So.
Yeah, I met with Leanne on that about a month ago, or sometime within the last month, about, yeah, if there's no feasible place to discharge, then you still are allowed to keep it within the system. But if there's not, the issue is, I believe that we have to document, I think pretty much on a partial by partial basis, whether or not they have disconnected or whether or not they're exempt from disconnection, I think by 2025. So it's a big planning effort. I think that she's going to probably tap into our engineering consultants for more help and expertise on that. But just after that meeting, I realized that that's something that needs to be in this chapter. So we can add some more specifics to it as it's recommended, because it's going to happen whether we want it to or not. It's required by 2025.
Yeah,
So it says MMSD, is it not a state requirement?
Can you say that again, Trustee Stokebrand?
I thought perhaps it was a state, but it says MMSD.
Yeah, I believe it's an MMSD requirement because of our combined sewer district.
Yeah, we run into problems because our residential lots are so narrow. We had a neighbor who disconnected theirs. The water was going into our basement. So, you know, it's not always possible, but
Lots of waivers headed for Shorewood.
yeah.
Any other thoughts on the existing list or things that are missing from the list? We can come back to it. Now we'll move on to chapter 5. So this, per the agenda, is item number 5. Thankfully, that works out well. So natural cultural resources, in the previous draft, we also titled it and sustainability. It just got confusing. Sustainability is not a state required chapter. So we've incorporated sustainability into this chapter, but in terms of titling the element, I've removed it for clarity's sake. So in this one, we're just looking at natural and cultural resources, introduction, vision, all straightforward. Stakeholder input, the previous planning effort that we have most recently is the Community Outdoor Recreation Plan that was updated in 2015. That plan relates to parks and open space in the village. I believe by DNR requirements, we need to update that at least every 5 years to maintain eligibility for grant purposes. So I believe the Parks Commission, if they haven't started working on it, they will be working on it shortly. I know Tyler's the liaison to that committee. He's had some conversations with me. I don't exactly know where it's at, but I do expect that we'll be updating that very shortly because it's over 5 years old now. So with that, there could be specific stakeholder input within that planning effort. Also within the stakeholder meetings that we had, we did have representatives of Little League and a soccer organization, that indicated that they're always fighting for space, whether it's at River Park or within a school district property. So we are pretty maxed out. So making sure that we use our space adequately, the primary goal.
Art, can I go back to your introduction paragraph?
Yep.
Just to be maybe more accurate and culturally sensitive, one could say that this area was already settled by Native Americans. So maybe we can rephrase that second sentence just to say, as immigrants settled in the area, the land was used for agriculture.
Okay.
And I have a question. Do we need to address agricultural resources when later is that a state requirement? Because later in the chapter, we say there are none.
Yeah, we have to include agricultural resources. None of our land is zoned for agriculture. So the closest stretch that I had was that we do provide, fresh vegetables and fruit from the farmer's market, but we don't have any active land engaged in our land use plan, but it is required.
So like the bee ordinance, I'm just saying.
Oh yeah, we could. It's food production. I mean, there was a discussion that I've, been made aware of, whether or not we want to allow chickens in the future, right? That was discussed. That is, it is something that we hear. So I think you chuckled, but I think that's a great point. I'll make a mention of, urban bee and potential poultry programs. Whether we recommend them, I'm not suggesting that we will, but it's
Let the record show, I am not against keeping the bees, but I am not in favor of adding chickens.
Can we add goats instead, please?
I was gonna say, Dan might have some other plans in his backyard.
I had chickens when I lived in Milwaukee. Then I moved here and I had to give them away. It was a sad day. I cried a little.
We could include a former village board voted down a motion to have chickens.
Just keep it factual.
And they were
That's all I ask.
Hey, Brett, or Bart, sorry. I was curious if you knew what kind of Native Americans, if we can name that and bring more truth to who was here first.
Yeah, I'm sure that that's documented within an existing resource. I don't know it offhand, unfortunately, but I can definitely clarify that section. I think that's worth noting.
It's in the report somewhere. I read it. I think the Sauk Indians.
There's a plaque for the Sioux Indian at Hubbard Park, but I don't know that this area was only for the Sioux Indians. Where's it, Sauk?
And I know it came up last year when there was the proposal for the outdoor teepees in Hubbard Park, I believe, correct? So I know that we had drafted a paragraph specific to our Native history. So I guarantee it exists. I'll make sure I have it and include it.
It could be a quick call to Karen de Hartog.
Yep, she's a great resource. she probably helped us with the last paragraph last year. So I know Village Manager Ewald worked on that too. So we'll make sure I can get that specific information in there.
That would be great.
Perfect. In terms of framework, once again, just kind of identifying who's responsible for the actions within this chapter. The village does have an active conservation committee. We also have a parks commission and a public art committee. I believe there might be talk of merging the parks commission to have a greater purpose with bikes and with bike and ped committee. At this point, it hasn't happened yet, so I'm keeping them separate. But in terms of natural resources, the Parks Commission oversees our parks. So making that clear that we have that, I think it's a great asset coming.
So I did want to think, the Conservation Committee, have they provided any input? This description seemed a little narrow, conserving energy and recycling materials.
They have not. You guys are the first body to review this. And so my intent always is to present things to you first, and that could be backwards, but there's a lot of people to confirm this information with. So last meeting, I presented to you and then I went to the CDA afterwards. So after I get through this is when I would send it out to the those committees specifically, with the hope, once again, of getting up prior to the next draft. So they have not seen it yet. So if they want to add to it, I'm happy to take it in. The Brewers might have scored or something. I don't know, my phone just went off. Agricultural resources, as we talked about, we don't have any active land engaged in agriculture, but we do have some accessibility to that through the farmers market. And I will include concepts of urban beekeeping.
And bees.
Yep, the beekeeping. We have that program. One of our plan commissioners is familiar with it, for sure.
What about like the Victory Garden Initiative and gardens at the community garden plots?
In terms of identifying locations for them, because do we have any currently in the village? I'm not familiar with. We do.
Lake Bluff has some, and I think
High school.
has some.
I'm sorry, you cut out, Sangeeta. Lake Bluff and where else?
Bluff and Shorewood High School.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Shorewood High School is a community park or school run, but I know the one at Lake Bluff is a community garden.
Okay.
And Kingo also has a garden, but I don't know how you draw the line there with private, public. So I just throw that out there.
No, if it's available to community members, it's a resource. I mean, if it's just their private garden, it probably wouldn't be. But if it's something that community members should be aware of as an opportunity, I'm happy to include it. So I'll do some.
They give the food away, so.
What's that?
They do give the food away, and obviously anybody can walk by and pick anything they want. So.
Okay.
We might want to confirm with either Trustee Ursink or someone else with the farmers market that it's going to be back at Lake Bluff Elementary School next year, or do they envision trying to continue in Estabrook Park, and maybe mention that 2020 location as a possibility for the future as well?
Yeah, I believe they're probably relocated through the renovation project, so we could be looking at another year or two. But yep, he's a great resource to know what their plans are. I don't know if they have any sort of long-term. I mean, maybe they want a long-term facility. That'd be a good thing to document, right? If they want, perhaps to buy something or to expand, I think this is the place to identify that potential need. So, good point.
I think they might also be looking at permanently locating to Estabrook, just because I think it's gone pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that for certain.
Yep, I'll reach out to him and his board and see if they have any, information to include, because I think it's relevant to document that discussion. We are required to include information on environmental corridors. So we have two primary corridors within the village, one with the Milwaukee River, and then the other one on our Lake Michigan shoreline. So we just document that we do have those within the village. A lot of work, restoration on the river recently, and then Lake Bluff, Lake Bluff restoration of Lake Michigan. So identifying any either current or long-term needs for those corridors would be the place to identify. wetlands, surface water there wrong, it looks like. We have Lake Michigan, Milwaukee River. Urban tree canopy is a big deal in many urban communities, including Shorewood. So we've in the past included a documentation of what types of trees we maintain. Importantly, that is being impacted by the emerald ash borer. And so DPW does have specific plans to tackle that issue that will be implemented obviously over the next 10 years, which includes this planning cycle. So we're making sure that we specifically include goals and objectives related to the maintenance of our tree canopy.
I had a question, Bart, just semantics. We call them, they're called street trees. Is that a generic term among planners? Would they be the trees that are in our parkways?
Yeah, it's generic among myself. I can't speak for the profession, but I could perhaps.
Street trees doesn't make sense to me, but it's just because I'm used to the parkway. But if that's the term of the industry, that's fine.
Once again, my own words. So I don't actually know if there's a specific word. I'll probably lean on our forestry department. How they define them is how I'll end up including them. Floodplains, lake bed grant program, any rare species. We just kind of referenced the resources within the, I believe the DNR has a map on those, but nothing of specific note. You know, if by chance we had, you know, a place for rare species, we would include that, but we don't have anything specifically within the village as of the last map update.
I do have a question about the 546 lake bed grant program. So Sangeeta and I were involved in this issues with Atwater Beach, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sangeeta, but we were told by the village that everything was contingent upon DNR approval, and right here it says it's Milwaukee County and Shorewood local permitting applies. So
that is my understanding of the law, the way it's written in this section. I think it was previously the old, I don't know, village board administration or the previous viewpoint that was not the case. But my understanding is this is the law, that the lake beds were granted in Milwaukee County. And then subsequently, Milwaukee County pretty much was hands off and gave it to the individual communities to deal with. And it will become important if and when, you know, the village wants to work on the jetties or even anything within on the boardwalk, or, you know, none of that was previously permitted. And they based it on the fact that they felt they were above the high water mark, but the reality is they have, the village of Shorewood has all ability to, you know, work on the lake bed. I think you still probably have to work with the Army Corps of Engineers, but in terms of permitting from DNR, you do not need the permit.
okay, so we leave it as it is, and now that I know where it is and it's part of a village document, that's helpful. Thank
Right.
you.
Yeah, I was going to say it was new to me. It was in the previous plan. I tried to confirm or update, but this pretty much is the same information that was presented previously. So I'm happy to confirm with the DNR just to make sure that it's accurate. I don't have a reference for where this came from, so I think it's worth reaching out to the DNR just to confirm that we have it accurately.
The reference, it's actually state statute. I'd have to, and I can email it to you, but it's actually granted in a state statute.
But for some reason, when we wanted to put new signs up pointing out the end of the public beach and, you know, no trespassing beyond, this was even before the Milwaukee boy drowned, we were told that we had to go through the DNR.
I know.
And we had to wait for a ruling from DNR legal staff before we could get any approval for the sign. So it's just, as a resident involved in an area here, it's extremely confusing and frustrating. And I know you've got a lot on your plate, Bart. So I don't know.
No, it's a very important thing to clarify. It was new to me, like I said. So if by chance, you know, my department was asked to weigh in that previous discussion, I would not have known this. So this is the value of the plan, that we, you know, keep this kind of historical information readily available. I don't know exactly where it's from, so I'm happy to confirm. I have a contact with the DNR that we talk with quite a bit on lake issues. So I'm sure if it's you know, in a statute, he would know, easily confirm it. So I can reach out to Adam on that.
And just for background, it would be in the Parks Commission minutes from Sangita, would you say 2018?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, Tyler would know. He talked to DNR and got the official information from them. So Tyler should have those letters or whatever his communications.
A fairly thick file.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I'll talk to Tyler about it. I know he reached out to me within that conversation. I didn't have much information for him because it was, you know, working with Lake Michigan was new to me. So this is part of the process that we're all learning together, and hopefully we can, you know, learn from it and move on and have it documented more easily for next time. So
I think local control would be great.
Then other planning efforts that relate beyond the outdoor recreation plan, we have the Milwaukee River Greenway Master Plan, which the village has been taking part of. We have a whole chapter on sustainability that relates to our sustainability plan. So once again, I'll be incorporating goals, objectives, recommendations from that plan into this chapter. I hope and believe that they already bulleted many of them already. President Rosick has asked about this next one several times. I don't actually know that we're actively documenting our progress on this, but we did sign a pledge via resolution to participate in the 25 by 25 program to reduce local energy sources. So if we're not tracking that, this would be a good place to, you know, identify who should be tracking that and what that looks like currently, because 2025 is near upon us now.
That's what I was wondering, what the result was. The results were from that first task, the energy audits, and then what are the next steps?
Yeah, and I don't know that I have the answer, and I believe that might have all taken place before Tyler became the staff liaison, so he might not know it either. So it could be in terms of digging into old commission meeting minutes and whatnot. But I know President Rosick has asked several times for it, and I can't really find any sort of follow-up post adoption of that. So I think it's a good place to, you know, kind of reset on that and understand what we actually pledged to do and see where we're at. And the audits obviously were the first part of it, and if we're not implementing those, why not, right? So I think it's a good check on us here to review that. Then within this chapter, we specifically talk about our parks and open space. We identify the management authority between whether it's the village, school, or county. We identify the acreage and the classifications, whether it's a community park or leisure space or a pocket park or a regional asset. So the intent is to kind of identify by classification which park is aimed at what resources.
Hey, Bart, I got a question on this. It's always been a little confusing to me, our relationship with Estabrook. So you know, maybe it makes sense to clarify in here, maybe not. Milwaukee County maintains the park, right? But our police monitor it? Is that how it works?
Yeah.
Ooh, I don't know that. Does someone else know the answer to that question? If our police?
Yeah, they do. When 6 years ago, I did this Police Citizens Academy course, and they do patrol at least the Shorewood section of Estabrook Parkway, and we parking lot and stop speeders, or at least one speeder that went by. We let him off with warning, but
I've never seen a sheriff's deputy car at Estabrook Park. And I think with their budget woes, we don't, you know, they barely mow.
You're right.
Right, it's probably the document, you know, their long-term woes, for lack of a better word, because it's, you know, it's a countywide issue, obviously, but it does.
But there are a lot of improvements going on through Friends of the Park. Friends of the Park's doing tremendous improvements, in, both in the infrastructure. They're putting in things that slow you down, traffic calming. They're putting in new facilities. So there's lots of, you know, great things to say about what's going on in the park, but I don't know that belongs here because that's Milwaukee County.
Agreed. I mean, they do patrol. We take our dog there to the dog park, so they're there regularly checking to see if you have a dog tag. But other than
Revenue,
that,
yeah, revenue.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We might want to mention the Friends of Estabrook Park, and there's also a Friends of Atwater Beach or Atwater Park too.
and maybe you want to mention the dog park and the disc golf course. I mean, if you're listing park amenities,
The beer garden.
and the beer garden, that's a big one.
Yeah, the beer garden's actually in Milwaukee, is my understanding, correct? Because I know they get their liquor license through the city of Milwaukee. So,
Oh, okay.
yep, I don't know what facilities honestly are within our borders. Is the dog park sounds like it might be. So maybe just a map of the park with our municipal borders would help clarify that for everyone, because it gets tossed around. Yeah, the beer garden I know is in the city of Milwaukee because that's where they get their liquor license from.
I thought the other half of the park in Whitefish Bay or Glendale, but I could be, maybe I'm just wrong.
Sorry, what was that?
I thought that the northern half of Estabrook Park was located in Whitefish Bay or Glendale.
It's actually Milwaukee.
Is it?
Yeah, there's that little piece of Milwaukee, Northampton.
Okay.
General table indicating the acreage and who it's maintained in the classification, once again taken from the outdoor recreation plan. The only change to this that I'll need to make is Hubbard Park back in 2017 was formally extended northwards towards Capitol Drive with the new trail and the river improvements. And so back then it was 6.1. I think we added, I don't know, 0.2 or something to that. So in talking with Tyler, that does need to be updated from the previous plan, but we'll make sure that's incorporated and just make a note of it when that was added.
I think it's time to have a discussion about Atwater Park because I don't really think it's a neighborhood park anymore. Just saying, I mean, you know, people in this neighborhood go to Whitefish Bay for a quiet park experience. It's a county park in my view, and I don't know. I don't know what else to say except it's in my view, it's no longer a neighborhood park. And maybe that's got to go higher up the flagpole than me. But what other options do we have for classification for park? Can we call it a regional county? I mean, it's not.
Yes. Estabrook is identified as a regional park. So if it in fact is more regional, I'm not sure this plan is the place to change that. It would be in the outdoor recreation plan, I think makes the most sense. But within this plan, we could identify that question because like I said, they'll be updating that plan shortly if they haven't already. And so identifying the concept of, acknowledging the distinction, I think it's a great specific question to include, but I think actually changing that would relate to the outdoor recreation plan because within that plan, the classifications matter in terms of grant funding and other things. So we can't change what that plan currently says, but we can note that over the years it has grown or, from its current classification potentially into a new classification.
Or you might want to just do something simple by including a line that says something like, although Hubbard Park, River Park, Atwater Park, Beach are shore-owned natural assets, they are open to the public, and residents of all communities enjoy those facilities, So it seems like it's a matter of semantics that we own those properties, but it's not like if they're gated facilities, anyone can enjoy them.
But I think the point is Atwater Beach has clearly changed. The usage of the park has clearly changed from what it used to be. And I don't think people realize Hubbard Park is very hidden away. Atwater is on a major arterial. We have people from all over the metro area coming to use, people from the South Side, a lot of UWM. It is no longer, it's very different what I'm talking about, I think, than access, it's usage.
Yeah, I think that's a great question because it does, it changes how we plan for that park, how we budget for it. So I made a note to include it within the questions within this chapter. But like I said, I think the actual place to change that classification would be within our actual comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, which I think is being updated. So it's a very relevant, timely question.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Stokerbrand, does the women's club still meet in the River Club in Hubbard's Park? I thought they met in the Village Center.
That's correct.
Okay, so
Okay.
Bart, want to change that second paragraph under
Okay.
Hubbard.
And is there still a North Shore Kiwanis?
I can highlight that to confirm that as well. So then with that, just wrapping up parks, we list each of the parks and what assets they have. We've got a few questions here. If there's any other questions on Hubbard Park, we talked about the village board last night updated a design concept for a canoe and kayak launch. So that will be a new feature within Hubbard Park. River Park, the Nature Preserve, Triangle Park last year had some community conversations about whether or not there could be different or other types of usage there. It sounds like they kind of settled on, landscaping and more passive space. Atwater Park and Beach has had a lot of activity over the past 10 years. They still do have a lot of long-term plans with the jetties and I believe a washing station, things like that. So it's still activity there.
So we take out the volleyball court. I haven't seen a.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Then I actually tried to Google map that as well. The 2015 outdoor recreation plan said it was still there, so I thought, well, maybe I'm just not seeing it whenever I go down there, so I can remove that, or at least confirm with DPW that we don't put it up anymore.
Too many people to play volleyball.
And then the last one, Humble Park, once again, just kind of an entryway, passive space. I'm curious if anyone knows more history on that park. I presume at one point it might have been developed, and I don't know, but maybe not the place for it. But if we ever know more about it, I'd be curious to include, the origins of why that park is what it is. Then county parks and trails are included, Estabrook and the Oak Leaf. I'll try to get a map of Estabrook and which sections are within Shorewood and versus Milwaukee, just for some clarity's sake. I think it's a question that comes up quite a bit. Might be useful to include if we can find one.
And apologies if I missed this. Someone told me that now you can go all the way from downtown along the Milwaukee River to Silver Spring.
Well, you can go way past Silver Spring.
Yeah.
It goes all the way through to Cedarburg to all the way to
I don't mean on the
Belgium.
bike.
to
I mean on a
Eastwood.
hiking trail. On a hiking trail.
Yeah, you've been able to,
The hiking trail goes up to Hampton.
Or do you mean the trail along the river?
Correct. A hiking trail right along the river.
Yeah,
Yep.
it goes up to Hampton now. They put through that extension. But then you can go across the street and walk through the park and then get on another river trail up to.
So I don't know if there's a name for that trail that we want to include in here.
There is. I'm trying to think of it.
Anyway, something we can get back
Riparian
to.
or something.
Yeah, there was something in the North Shore now. I thought maybe within the last few months about that.
Is it the Riparian River Trail? I know that I've heard reference to that. I don't know if that's
That could be it.
the name of the full trail or if the section in Shorewood was named that, but I'll make a note to confirm that. It's probably maintained by various groups at that point, so where we can include that, we'll have to confirm, because I don't think it's on a county park. We'll figure that out, but good to include. There's a lot in this little village, so make sure we get it all in. Park facilities, also the school district maintains Atwater, Lake Bluff High School Intermediate School, obviously with some bigger uses there, the track and field and stuff. So just confirming that they are located here.
Atwater added pickleball.
Really?
Did they change the tennis courts?
Additional striping and
Okay.
a movable net.
So Atwater, it's tennis and pickleball courts there then? Okay,
Well, Lake Bluff has tennis and futsal.
good to know. And I believe,
I think you might want to put seasonal with the phrase ice rink.
okay. I do want to confirm with the school district what the referendum, I believe there might be new tot lots coming with that. I don't know for sure. Maybe you guys do or not. I thought my building inspector implied that he thought there were some improvements within the plans. But I can confirm with them what aspects they might be upgrading additionally, but good to know on the pickleball and futsal courts. I did not have that noted. Anything else on parks while we're talking about them?
On the next page, oh wait, and that's under other planning efforts. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Sure. So anyone else on parks? Otherwise we can move to planning efforts. Like I said, we include the Emerald Ash Borer plan assessment. That's a big focus of the forestry department to maintain that plan. Since the last plan, we've done Atwater Beach Management Master Plan and Ecological Study. I think there's still some things on those to complete, so we'll keep reference to them within here. The Outdoor Recreation Plan in 2015 obviously needs to be updated, but that's where most of the park information comes from.
Mark,
Yes.
do we want to include any mention of how higher lake levels, like we've been experienced the last year or two, and storms have impacted these plans? You know, I mean, the beach is much smaller when the lake level's high, and there's been some storm damage.
Yeah, with the, and you're referring to Lake Michigan, right? Not so much the Milwaukee River.
Exactly.
Yeah, within the Atwater Park section, I can try to include reference to that. Something to keep watch of, obviously, if that does impact the usability of the beach down there.
I think the nature reserve has also been affected by
Okay.
walls and accessibility with trains and whatnot.
So, for example, we're spending $55,000 to try to stabilize the sand on the beach at Atwater this fall. I don't know.
Wow.
Yep, by the boardwalk, is that correct? That was the discussion? Yep. I'll confirm that with DPW, how to include that. Because I believe that was, you know, the start of the conversation, right? Is that I think there's.
I mean, we did get a lot of FEMA money to do some things, but the saving the sand is our own money.
Okay. Once again, just kind of showing you what the current goals, objectives, and recommendations are. I think I might have had one of those in there twice. So we'll just remove the duplication of the promote environmental protection. I'll probably wordsmith them once again, but more importantly, to discuss the recommendations. If there's anything missing or things that you want to talk about here, I think this is probably where I intended to have more focused conversation, but this is just a compilation of things that I've gotten from other plans or for other things I've seen or heard along the way. So if you have any other specific recommendations, I'd be happy to consider including them.
So since we don't have bubbler bikes, can we really say that we do continue to fight for our bus lines? So does that mean that we are promoting transportation alternatives to single-use vehicles? Because other than fighting for the buses, well, we do make it friendly for bicyclists. And
I was going to say, yeah, we
okay.
biking efforts. So in terms of energy conservation, I think that is something that the village still does engage in.
That third bullet under 3, I wasn't sure if that was still relevant now that the oaks and Harbor trees have gone up north of Hubbard Park, or what other private investment in private property along the banks of the Milwaukee River there might be.
Yep, that's probably been accomplished, quote unquote, since the last plan. So I think that probably could be removed.
Okay.
Should be removed, I should say.
And then in the potential concepts below that, where we talk about identifying opportunities for optimal use of parks and open space. And maybe this is, that would be more appropriate to be in the outdoor recreation plan, but I'd like to some, I think we need some undeveloped park space too, to just enjoy nature, that not every, section of our park spaces need some activity or structure on, kids need grass just to run around in and, lie in the grass and look at the clouds. As do adults.
So the Shorewood Nature Preserve would be the answer to that. It's wild.
Well, maybe a little between manicured park and wild, something in the middle. And I also think that we need to mention, this is all about uses of people, by people. I think we need to mention the importance of Lake Michigan shoreline and Estabrook as an important migratory bird path for a number of species. And it came up in the Wilson Drive public input, the number of species that are found in Estabrook Park, that they're not just for people. And there have been, numerous or regular photos and posts on different social media, Facebook groups in the village. And so much that one coyote has been now named Carl. But so maybe something about an increasing coyote population in Shorewood and the need for education and interactions with this kind of wildlife.
And there is some sort of a butterfly. Don't we have a registered or somehow notably noticed a butterfly garden on the bluff at Atwater? I thought that the Senior Resource Center and the public schools got together and created a Monarch's Way station or something.
I thought it was by the library.
Oh. I think there's one at Atwater too.
It might be.
Yeah, I know that there's definitely efforts for it. So I think a general bullet or concept on wildlife to include all of these things is a great recommendation.
Good idea, Barb.
We are doing them. So yeah, thanks for the recommendation on that.
Bees and butterflies, we got them.
And you wanted chickens too, right? Just kidding.
It's just the manure that stinks, not the birds.
The coyotes would love chickens.
Oh geez.
Carl needs more chicken in his diet.
Anything?
I just want to know from the DPW, what do you do when you find the chicken dead? I mean, a question for Leanne and the manure.
Anything else on the natural resources portion of this chapter? I think the cultural resources come up second. So if not, we can always come back to it at a wrap up again. Or if you have thoughts later on in the week, feel free to email them to me. Be happy to incorporate it into the next draft. So then moving on to cultural resources, this more relates to, historical or cultural aspects from the village. So we talk about the presence of a historical society and what that means for the village and how, how we can work with them. I will reach out specifically to them to make sure that any long-range plans or goals that they have will be, reflected within. I have not done that yet. But then we do make mention of the existing historic sites or state of Wisconsin historical markers, all listed here. Those are specifically, marked. The Milwaukee County landmarks, which is the final bullet point there, that's a little more nebulous to me because it's almost like you can nominate anything, quite honestly, and I don't know if they accept everything or what it is, but for reference, I know the DPW Yards has been nominated as a landmark for Milwaukee, which very appropriate in terms of architectural, but I don't know that means anything in terms of protections or larger concepts. I think it's just kind of a identifying educational kind of aspect. So once again, we've got various sites throughout the village that have been recognized for their historical significance. Archaeological sites referenced within here. We often get requests on those when we have, projects that involve federal money to make sure that archaeological sites aren't being disturbed. We do have various public art within the community, and this one I kind of struggled on in terms of identifying a specific document to define quote unquote what village public art is. But my understanding is that we do have 4 specific installations. There could be more I did update the names of them. So I believe the quote unquote, the Patel that was identified in the plan is called Congruity. The Plenza is actually called Spillover 2. Then we have the Ghost Train, and then recently the Signaling History Project. So there may be more public art within the village I'm not aware of. Happy to include it if you have thoughts on that. There was a thought or a concept, I'm not sure, and hopefully maybe someone has more reference to it than I do, like the white architectural waves that were added to 3970 Oakland Avenue. I'm not sure if that was a public or private investment, but it showed up on someone's map at one point and it was called public art. So I don't know about that one specifically.
It was part of a facade grant, I think.
Okay, that's what I would have thought.
Art.
Another
Yes.
facade grant gone horribly wrong.
Noted. But yeah, Crystal can verify. It was on a map that we were looking at, and I didn't include it because I didn't think it was considered public art, but maybe someone thought it was publicly funded, so we'll leave that off. I mean, it was a facade grant per se, but I don't think it went through any sort of public art vetting
I
process.
think publicly funded, yes. Public art, debatable.
Sure, yep. So yeah, those are the 4 that I've at least documented. Once again, if there are more, feel free to let me know. The Public Art Committee also did at one point identify, sites for future artwork. So I referenced that work in here as well. I'm not sure how official that was per se, but it does exist. So if we were to receive, a bequest for public art, we would have, at least that identified where it might go. I referenced the Shortest Artist Guild in terms of a community cultural asset that we have that's, in the works. They identified within the stakeholder input a need for additional space for art. So I'll make sure that finds its way into the recommendations. Indoor and outdoor. I know indoor is a large need for our community in terms of their input. Shorewood Foundation obviously funds a lot of cultural activities within the village, just making reference to them so that we know that they're available and what they do. Other planning efforts, which I found very useful in my time, is the Architectural Survey of Shorewood 2011. It's got a great history in terms of our development and our assets, in terms of what could be eligible either individually or on a district-wide basis. There has been a lot of discussion on historic preservation, primarily since the home on Lake Drive was demolished for a soon-to-be permitted new house. It is coming hopefully soon. But so there was a lot of discussion last year on that. It kind of hasn't been prioritized in terms of what else we've been doing, but I know it always is behind the scenes, and a lot of people are interested in it. So I want to make sure that this chapter references that appropriately, what we can do as a village. We've got small staff to provide resources on that, but educating people on what they can do individually, I think, is also very useful in terms of tax credits or things like that. Goals, objectives, and recommendations. We had one specific to cultural resources, and that was to attract residents who value education, culture, and a high quality of life. I don't necessarily agree that that's a goal. I think we should probably talk more specifically about what assets we have and how we either maintain or expand them. I mean, our residents are, a definite component of that, but I don't know that this is how I would word that goal. That being said, the possible recommendations that were listed, a lot of historical references and cultural references to volunteer run events, once again, acknowledging the limited resources that we have and the great capacity that our residents have shown towards, being more proactive in organizing that stuff. So if there's any thoughts on this, be happy to.
I have one. It just seems to me that because our performing arts are so strong at the public school, I wonder if we need one bullet point that says continue to support something like the performing arts in the school.
I like that.
I'm pretty sure Bart's frozen.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have a theater program.
Can I just say that I disagree with that? I mean, I think not that it isn't valued within the community and stuff, but I don't know, like putting it in as a village, like a village priority when really DPI controls instruction and you know, some of that sort of dictates what the school can do. I think, I guess I see a potential for conflict there by making it a village priority, but perhaps not a DPI priority or a school priority.
Yeah, I guess they would need to know, you know, what's the dark side of that, adding that. And that's, you know, I mean, the taxpayers are paying, besides through the village, they're paying through the, you know, obviously their taxes to the schools for that. So I understand your point. It's well taken.
Isn't that something that we could just leave to the schools? I mean, I sort of tend to agree that it just seems to veer out of the lane that we've established for this plan.
Okay, I agree. Never
Yeah.
mind.
We could make it more generic just in terms of finding opportunities to support performing arts in the village and not specify where that comes from. It could be an outside organization. It could be the Artist Guild. It could be the school. It could be someone else. So if we find a way to make it more generic and just acknowledge that it is a community goal to have
We do have a lot of symphony musicians here, and we have a lot of musical teachers, piano, etc., vocal, trumpet, just something to think about.
Okay, I'll try to make a more neutral way to include that if possible.
Bart, I agree with you about that existing goal, the attract residents who value education, culture, and a high quality of life. And I think I submitted a suggested rephrasing of that in the survey that you sent out to us. You might want to check that and see if that works here.
Definitely rings a bell that I read that from you. Yep.
Okay.
Well, that's the last of my very boring, dry slides. If there's any thoughts I missed on these two chapters, feel free to weigh in either now or after the meeting. Like I said, you can always shoot me an email. I do have a wrap-up slide, once again, just talking about the schedule. As I acknowledged in the beginning, we're going fast on this, but I need more time personally and professionally to sit down and actually, work in these details. This mid-October public engagement meeting, I'm going to be honest, I don't see it happening in mid-October. The consultant had previously recommended October 22nd, so I was prepared to suggest that we could confirm that date, not only with last night's board actions, but also just in general. I feel like I need more time to sit down with this. So I'm just being honest with my time. I think at the next October Plan Commission meeting, we can reconvene on some of these issues and items and then perhaps plan for a mid-November or early October public meeting. But I'd still like the time to sit down with this in the next month or so to wrap up some of these loose ends. You'll be getting Van Wall's chapters next week. And so at that point, we'll start engaging in mapping and other things. So there's definitely things I can bring to you in your regular October meeting prior to having this public engagement meeting. We're just not there quite yet. So hope you're okay with my honesty on that. We'll end up pushing things slightly, if not, by a month or so. So anyone have any thoughts on, my thoughts on the schedule?
I think that will work for us. As soon as you can kind of narrow what's a feasible time frame, we probably need to do some, publicizing that public engagement meeting. Because I was kind of disappointed we only had 3, non-commissioners of the residents who participated in that virtual public open house back in July.
I 100% agree with you. I was hoping for more than that. We are planning on doing a village-wide mailing with the date and the opportunity to join the virtual meeting. So that's why I'm hesitant to confirm a date and send that out and then realize that we just don't have the time. I don't want to send that out until I know that we will be prepared for it. So we are hoping for greater engagement within this next meeting. Like I said, the goals, objectives, policies will be there. So I think the community will have a good chance to respond to, what we're proposing. I don't want to give them, open-ended thoughts. I want them to be actually responding to things. So we're hoping for better publicity of the next meeting for sure, which is why I think I just need to be realistic with that date.
Sounds good.
Art, can you do this? The public engagement part of it. I strongly feel a lot of people don't participate because they feel intimidated and they don't understand what exactly this process and what its purpose. I don't know if there's a way to maybe put it in a little bit more plain English language or just in much simpler words without, just saying comprehensive plan update. It just kind of goes over a lot of people's heads is what that is. So I feel like you would get better engagement if it was written in a lot more plain English.
Noted, for sure. We got better participation in the transportation and parking plan when we posed questions to people, when we said, like, do you want more bike infrastructure? Come to this meeting. Or do you want to change parking permits? Your input is needed. So I think once we have more of the goals outlined, we can kind of pick some ones that might be, more quote unquote hot buttons that people might be attracted to participating in. Definitely looking forward to greater involvement within this next stage for sure.
Art, are you going to send us a survey in the near future to narrow down the goals for these 2 chapters as you previously?
I don't have specific plans to do that.
I know we don't have as many as we did, say, in economic development or housing.
Right, the housing and economic development ones, there's just so many concepts that were floating out there that I was looking for greater focus on those. I think with what I presented here tonight, there's not that much whittling down that needs to take place. So I think I can find a way to work most of them within it. So I wasn't expecting to. Once again, you're always welcome to give me your thoughts, however you want to do it, but I wasn't expecting to do a survey on any additional chapters. Those 2 are just pretty big ones.
Got it. Okay.
So with that, if there's any other comments, we could take them here. Otherwise, we could move on to the future agenda items if by chance anyone wants to suggest or recommend anything. I'm going to be honest once again, if it's not the comp plan, it's probably not going to happen until the comp plan's done. But always happy to make a note of things that you want to tackle moving forward.
As a matter of curiosity, what is coming down the pipeline after the comp plan is done? I mean, what do we need to tackle next?
So there's 2 that are on my current radar in my head when you ask that question. One of them relates to our parking requirements within the zoning code. So new occupancies, when they come in, how we review the parking regulations, that's been long discussed, and the transportation plan recommended updating those. The other one is a discussion potentially of special privilege permits and updating the code on when those are required. They impact land use, and so the Plan Commission would be involved with that. It's something that you don't administratively approve, that goes to the board, but those 2 things are on my next to-do list. But quite honestly, I feel like most of your work is going to be implementing this plan, and I think the land use chapter is something that you guys have identified as something that needs to be reviewed and discussed more thoroughly. So I would expect in 2021 greater participation in updating the zoning and land use regulations within the village. So I hope that's something you're looking forward to working on. It's a pretty big task, but we need to get through this first to identify, what that means. But that's my hope. In the budgeting discussions, we went through 2 weeks ago, I think it was, I didn't put in for any additional planning efforts next year. I've been doing housing plans and transportation plans and the comp plan and things like that. I need the time to actually start implementing those things. And so my 2021 hopefully is sitting down and looking at the planning efforts we've done, including this comp plan, and kind of starting to tackle those. And as I've heard, land use and zoning code are in dire need of some attention. So that's a long-winded answer to, I think that's what your 2021 looks like.
I'm sorry, Bart, what were those first 2 that you mentioned before you got updating zoning and land use?
Off-street parking regulations. That was a recommendation of the transportation and parking plan to update those. And then special privilege permits. That's come up at the board several times in terms of why does the board see these? Why can't you do these differently? So those are 2 things that I can quickly, relatively, tackle, and then hopefully get to land use.
Okay, thank you.
But just, I think this is great. I mean, we asked to tackle more a little while ago, and now it seems like we're doing it. So this is why we're here, to do the work.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Like I said, I've been doing parking probably for longer than I ever anticipated. So I look forward to getting back on more planning, land use kind of stuff. So hopefully we can get to that shortly.
You really love parking.
Oh, I love it. The person who rides a bike everywhere talks about parking all day long.
To clarify, so when we're looking next week at that land use chapter, we don't have to go to the mat about changing the zoning codes and land use. We can follow this plan with changes next year. You don't have to kind of shove it into this plan.
Correct. We will be discussing conceptual changes to the plan, but the specifics wouldn't happen until the plan implementation stage. So I know Vandewall they've got a few maps that they'd like to present next week to kind of discuss where those changes might look. I haven't had a chance to fully go through them yet, but yeah, this stage is kind of more conceptual. The actual changes will happen post adoption.
And any developments coming down the line that you've heard of? I mean, I know that, that property where Queensway Dry Cleaners and residential property have now been up and sodded. And there's the old, North Shore Bank building on Lake Bluff in Oakland. But when there's an opportunity there, you'll just put it on the agenda.
An opportunity for what? In terms of
Development or redevelopment, or somebody needs a permit to go in the bank building, but there's nothing on the horizon is what I'm asking.
Yeah, so kind of how that works, and this kind of came up with the Legion site. So if what they propose is allowed per the zoning code, the plan commission necessarily wouldn't review it. So I don't want to promise you that you're going to see every development that comes through. So if it meets all the regulations and has required parking, the plan commission actually doesn't review some of those things. So depending on what's proposed, you may or may not specifically notice that. In terms of redevelopment, if any village financing is involved, obviously the CDA would be noticed first. So yeah, as things come up, they definitely go to the appropriate committees, whether it's for land use modifications or financing. Yeah, we hear developers with interest, but nothing specifically on the books. I can say that we have had a discussion with a developer for the Sunseekers site, and I believe the CDA may be hearing a discussion of how to, because we don't actually have a TIF policy right now, right? So the strategic planning effort identified that the village needs to have wants to have a TIF policy and application procedure. So because the developer is more interested in pursuing that, we are prioritizing that within the CDA's meeting next Friday, if I have the dates right, the first Friday in October. I believe they will be reviewing a draft application, but nothing has been applied for. It's just kind of conversations of, if I would propose this, what would be the process? And so we want to make sure our process is in place. So yeah, if it doesn't meet the zoning code, or if they're proposing, you would definitely be the body that would recommend approval or denial of that. If it meets the zoning code, it honestly, might not be reviewed by the plan commission. So I just want to be honest in terms of how that works.
Unless they need like a conditional use permit.
Correct. So if one of the commercial tenants needed it or something, but if it meets the zoning code and other aspects like the Legion did, it would just be a by right approval design through the design review board kind of stuff. But we'll be as transparent as we can when we know as much as we know about it.
Okay. Thank
So
you.
that's a Hackbarth property?
Correct. So the Sunseekers building is owned. I don't know if it's an LLC or not, but that is correct. He owns that, and the parking lot where the trucks are parked just to the west of that. It's two separate properties. And yeah, so there's the parking lot is separate than the building, and then actually the single family or duplex in the corner on, I believe it's Stoll, is also being discussed in terms of potentially, consolidating those three parcels into one parcel for a redevelopment.
I see.
Yeah.
It's a pretty sizable redevelopment.
Correct, and I know that he mentioned, because there's that parking lot there on the other corner on, blanking on the street, but the Shoreline property for their tenants. They have no interest in selling it, so I believe he wanted to get the whole block, say, but at this point, he's looking at the three of them and seeing what he could propose for that site. Nothing specifically given to us yet, but we are trying to get ahead of that question because we know it's coming. Anything else in terms of future agenda items? Otherwise, like I said, our next meeting is next Tuesday. Crystal will be sending out the packet on Friday. I'm heading out for the rest of the week, so I'll see you, next week when we have the meeting, but she'll be sending the packet out, working with Vandewall to make sure it's up to date on everything. They'll be leading the conversation. We have 3 chapters. It could be quite a handful because one of them is land use. So I guess just prepare accordingly, and we'll try to get through it. If not, I'd be happy to entertain a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Okay, we are adjourned at 8:16. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you next week.
Great.
All right, we'll see you.